and start following the Constitution instead of just going up there and voting something that sounds good or looks good or makes everybody back home think, wow, he's doing a great job. So I'm hoping that our Tea Parties will really emphasize the Constitution and how far outside of the limitations of the powers granted our government has moved, and start pushing it back in the direction of back behind those limited powers that the Constitution grants to it.
Well, one thing that I've wondered with some of these Tea Parties around the country is that there's been a couple that there's been like a political party kind of spring up with the Tea Parties. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Oh, I don't know if it's a political party per se. There's been a lot of talk about forming a new political party, but I really think we need to reform the parties that are in place. Our politicians, over the years, they've been treated like royalty, and they've been told that, they're better than the rest of us. And they get that mindset. One thing I just happen to remember, Arlen Specter, he was from the rural Kansas town of Russell, from a humble beginning, and at one of his town hall meetings recently, he was quoted as saying, after the people were telling him that they didn't like what he was doing in Washington, he told the people at his town hall meeting, he says, "You people are not going to tell me how to run my congressional office." And I thought to myself, excuse me? Yeah. Wait a minute, whose congressional office is this? They need a re-education, and I hope that the re-education is going to happen at the ballot box. So.
Well, as we wrap up here, gentlemen, you got any final comments that you want to get out there to your supporters and some of the people that are watching?
I have a short story.
Yeah, jump in there, brother.
There was a man who was a teacher, I believe it was a 5th grade class, and they wanted to do a civics lesson. So they were going to have an election in their classroom about having a class president. They thought, this happened about a little over a year ago when the presidential election was happening, and so I wanted to do this class project. And so they had a few runoffs, narrowed it down to 2 people, a young man and a young lady. And so they got up to do their final campaign speech. Brian was the first one up. He was very articulate. He talked about how they're going to improve the classroom and involve students more in the process and become better students. And he sat down, and it was Olivia's turn. Well, Olivia stood up and gave a very concise speech. She simply said, "Free ice cream for the whole class." Well, the whole class went crazy. Free ice cream. They thought this is great. Olivia is who we want. But there was a little discussion afterwards. They talked about, well, who's going to pay for the ice cream? Well, Olivia didn't know. The teacher asked, well, will the class pay for it? Will your parents pay for it? She didn't know, but she was going to see the whole class got ice cream. Well, naturally, guess who won? Olivia won, hands down. But that just goes to show you, what I see happened in this last election, a lot of voters were voting with the mentality of a 9-year-old. They saw that ice cream out there, and it didn't matter how he was going to pay for it or who was going to pay for it. They saw that ice cream, they wanted that ice cream. Now, 52% of the people voted for ice cream. Now, the 48% are left to feed the cow and clean up the mess. That's how I see the last election process. The Tea Parties, our local Tea Party is going to be using the next couple months to discuss what direction we want to go. I think we're going to focus some on education, getting people to understand the Constitution and informing people about what's really going on and where different candidates stand. So, but there's going to be a lot of work ahead of us.
Well, I'll tell you, with the ice cream, I love that story, by the way. Whether it be ice cream or change, they kind of tossed that out there. But give me your final thoughts on what you think 2010 and everything's going to be about.
Well, I hope 2010 is an awakening in this country to the fact that if you're wanting free ice cream, then what you have to do is you have to become a slave.
Yeah.
And that when you want the government to protect you from the liberty to fail, then you become a slave. You're accepting what the government will give you, and government's never been good at doing anything right. And it always wants to take away freedoms. So I'm hoping people will understand that if you want liberty, if you really want to be able to seek to succeed, then you have to have the liberty to fail. And you can't have a government there that puts a restriction on your ability to succeed just so you won't fail. Because when that happens, then neither happens. I'm really hoping in 2010 that people will kind of get the Sarah Palin mentality. Here's a person that's not an Ivy League, not a lawyer per se of some sort, and yet here's a person who started grassroots, worked her way up, became a governor of a state, and change some things. And we can change some things. We have to be involved. We have to know what the Constitution says, and we have to be willing to fail in order to have our liberty back. So I'm just hoping that people will start to realize that the government has stolen our liberty, and we have to take responsibility for ourselves to get that back. But when we do, we're going to find a sense of freedom and liberty that we haven't known for over 100 years. And I hope that fire then will light up people to really get this country back to the foundations and back to the government that we had to begin with.
Well, thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you making some time for us. I know you guys are very busy, and I'll tell you, I'm just hoping that some of the candidates follow this, read this a little bit in the 2010 elections.
You can go to our website, salinatparty.com, and get a free copy of the Constitution.
That's cool. Well, thanks, Joe. Thanks for coming down. Appreciate it. Well, let's go watch more here on Live from Salina.